Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe, joined by CJ Vogel. All right, let's just get to it. Georgia 35, Texas 10. Before we get started, I want to thank our game day coverage sponsors here at On Texas Football. That's Flight by Yingling, Von Lane, and Tito's Handmade Vodka. CJ, I saw some of your videos coming through from the postgame press conference. Sark called the fourth quarter a disaster. Colin Simmons called it a disaster. No matter how you slice it, CJ, this was probably the worst possible outcome that could have happened to Texas tonight.
Yeah, I think it absolutely was. In the fourth quarter, it was a disaster to build on Sark and Colin Simmons there. Look, you cut the deficit to 4, and then the next time your offense touches the ball, they're down 18. And you talk about it all the way throughout. Texas had opportunities, but for whatever reasons, whether it be drops, penalties, the inability to get off the field on fourth down, Texas just continually stubbed their toe tonight, right? For 2.5, 3 quarters, Texas was right there in it with Georgia. It was ugly, but they were there, and that's what good teams do. They scratch, they claw, they fight, and then the onside kick came. And then the coaching, balance of the scales fell heavily in favor of the Georgia Bulldogs, and that was the end of it. That was the big moment in which the dam broke for the Longhorns.
CJ, I'm going to give you some numbers, and after tonight, these are the 3 losses to Georgia, what Texas has done. In those 3 losses, Texas has rushed for 83 net yards on 72 carries, and Georgia with 13 sacks and 32 tackles for loss. CJ, to me, one of the big things boils down to, I talked about it all week, and I thought Georgia was a bad matchup for Texas because of the athletes Georgia has in the trenches. They're just better than Texas up front, period, point blank, end of story.
Yeah, and that's what's frustrating, right? Because on the first drive, your first play of the day goes for 16 yards to Trey Wisner, right? You run for 33 yards on the opening series. You're moving the ball pretty well between the tackles and off in outside zone, and you end the game with 23 total rushing yards, right? Sacks included in there. But how, right? You were running the ball well. You just didn't commit to the run if you're Steve Sarkisian. There was an opportunity there for Texas to establish the run, to basically put their, essential impact in the run game. And for whatever reason, Steve Sarkisian said, hey, we don't want to do that today. And then to hear in the halftime interview, he says, we're running the ball well. Well, you're not running it enough, right? You're averaging 6 yards a carry with Trey Wisner at halftime. Why does he only have 6 touches? You got very pass dependent and very pass happy too early in this game. And for whatever reason, Sark opted that was the best course of action for him.
And CJ, even when you break it down, I mean, to win this game, Texas needed more. Even when you take out sacks, they needed more than 39 yards, 2.8 per carry. To your point, I mean, I thought Trey Wisner ran the ball well when he had opportunities in the first half. But, again, the game got away from Texas. And, CJ, maybe the most disappointing thing for me was all year we've seen Texas just be this undisciplined team. Penalties have been an issue. Attention to detail, just missed opportunities. And I think it shows you, hey, in a game where Kirby Smart mentioned it after the game, hey, you have to be aggressive in a game where the margins are this thin, and in a game with really thin margins, man, those things add up and they mount and they pile up quick and they kill you in a game like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And for Kirby to say that kind of gives you an idea of why he's been so successful at Georgia, right? Especially against Texas. Look at where that aggression has come from. Against Texas in game 1, it was up front, it was blitzing, it was bringing pressure, getting home on the quarterback. Worked like a charm. Game 2 in the SEC championship game, it was the fake punt that was basically a dagger to the Longhorns, and tonight it was the onside kick. That aggressiveness is what separates Kirby Smart from all the other coaches in college football, and that aggressiveness is something that we still have yet to see from Steve Sarkisian on a consistent basis, and it makes me wonder if that's even in the repertoire for Sarkisian as a head coach to go make those aggressive calls when your back's against the wall or when you need a crazy change of momentum, or to truly just roll the dice and see if your team can come out on top because they're better than the opponent. You don't see that from Steve Sarkisian's teams. But you saw it again tonight from Kirby Smart, and now Texas 0-3 against Kirby and the Georgia Bulldogs since joining the conference.
CJ, Texas sitting here now at 7-3 with 2 regular season games left. I think a 25-point loss on the road in Athens probably, for all intents and purposes, is going to wipe out your playoff hopes. But we'll see what happens. What was the vibe in the locker room after the game?
Yeah, I'm with you. I do, not see a whole lot of room for a path to Texas for the playoff. But we heard from Trey Wiseman, we heard from Colin Simmons, we heard from Steve Sarkisian saying, hey, it's a 2-game season from here on out. We got to go win against Arkansas. We got to go win against Texas A&M, and then we'll let what our resume is speak for itself at the end of the year. But to your point, with the way that fourth quarter went and the way that Texas kind of rolled over and let Georgia do whatever they wanted in that fourth quarter, that's going to be a tough pill to swallow, and that's going to be a tough look for the committee to say that they're a worthy playoff team.
CJ, for Arch Manning, this game felt for him, at least from my vantage point, a lot like the Florida game where you couldn't run the ball. You didn't really try to run the ball. You put way too much on your quarterback. And under the circumstances, he played about as well as you could have expected him to. But against a Kirby Smart, Glenn Schumann defense, it needed to be a lot. And not to say that he played bad, but 27 for 43 for 251 and a touchdown. He needed to basically be Superman, CJ, for Texas to win the way that thing unfolded.
Yeah, I thought he showed glimpses, right? He's playing the way that you had hoped he would earlier in the year, right? Coming into the season, I think by now, game 10, you look at his performance tonight against the Georgia team and you say, wow, you're close to 70% completion, right? You threw for, a pretty healthy amount of yards, 250. Things looked pretty good early on. He was dialed, I thought. And then, of course, the drops come in, and then you don't convert on third down. You get to the red zone, a false start backs you up, and then a drop to move the chains stalls a drive, and you're sitting there saying, okay, hopefully that doesn't build. And it did for the Texas offense, but to no fault of Arch Manning's, in my opinion. I thought DeAndre Moore was held on that interception. That was really the only lone that comes to my mind in the first 2 or 3 quarters, errant pass for Arch. But altogether, I thought he played very well.
CJ, big picture, what do you think needs to change in the offseason? Because, look, we can talk about Arkansas and A&M, but for Texas to get over the hump, to get to the level where Georgia and Ohio State are, the sloppiness in these games needs to stop. The indisciplined nature needs to stop. The attention to detail needs to be a lot better. What do you think needs to change for that to turn the corner?
Yeah, you mentioned the sloppiness. Absolutely. Discipline is a very big issue for Texas, right? Warren Roberson on every special teams down feels like he is, suspect number 1 to get a penalty on special units, right? The offensive line, it's still not imposing its will, and it hasn't for a few years now. If you want to be a dominant team, not just in the SEC, but across college football, your lines of scrimmage have to be stout. Defensively, Texas has been very good the last 3 or 4 years. Offensively, this is not a team that imposes its will, and I think Sark's okay with that, right? That kind of fits what he wants to do with his passing game, right? He very clearly tonight said, we're not committing to the run game. No, that's not what we're going to do, even though you're averaging 6 yards a carry with your starting running back. If that's the case, I think that's a psychological thing saying, hey, eventually we're going to get bit. And if that's the case, then you're basically saying our offensive line is not good enough, and that has to change, number 1.
Yeah, no doubt about it. CJ, final thoughts as you get ready to close up shop in Athens and head back home.
Yeah, final thoughts for me. Look, I think this was a bad football team. Not a bad football team. It was a flawed football team where improbable and miraculous wins masked a lot of the issues that this team has had since the very opening game, right? Penalties, not executing in the red area, self-inflicted wounds, busted coverages. That's who this team has shown us to be through 10 weeks. We've obviously seen the highs, Oklahoma and Vanderbilt. We've seen the lows, Florida, Kentucky, Mississippi State. But through it all, there have been very common themes where, again, winning football games masked a lot of the issues that were at hand with this team. But when you play a team with the similar or more talent on the other side of the ball and a coach that is very good at coaching football in Kirby Smart, you're going to be exposed for those deficiencies. And I thought that came to light very clearly. And for Texas, it's, 1, unfortunate that it happened on a national scale, but 2, it's been a continual theme of Sarkisian getting out-coached in big games. Look back at TCU, game day at home. You look back at, Ohio State, Georgia all 3 times. There have been plenty of very winnable situations for Texas that they've looked completely flat in, and that is a huge concern for me.
Yeah, fair or not, Sark's now 1-7 at Texas against top 5 teams. That one win was against Nick Saban in 23, but the further removed you get from it, it does feel like it was eons ago. But the bottom line, CJ, at this point in the program's trajectory, you've raised the bar to a championship standard, and fair or not, at some point you're going to have to break through and win games like these. But I'm with you until you can stop committing senseless penalties and, the drops and just lack of execution. Again, to your point, Georgia just exposes those things. And when you may be able to get away with those against a lot of teams, but you let those mistakes pile up against Georgia, you end up getting a 25-point loss. CJ, thank you for the knowledge and expertise as always. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes for producing it. Thank you again to our game day coverage sponsors, Flight by Yingling, Von Lane, and Tito's Handmade Vodka. If you're not a member over at ontexasfootball.com, you can get over to the site right now and sign up using the promo code OTFOG to get 1 year of access for $39.95. Make sure that you like this video and that you're subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel. That way, whether it's here on the channel or on the site, you're not missing any of our coverage before, during, and after every Texas game this season. For CJ, for Matthew, for the entire On Texas Football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And until next time, welcome.